Hello everyone and welcome to what is part 1 of my top 20 episodes of The Walking Dead. In this video I shall be covering the entries from number 20 to number 11. Now I did initially plan to just make a video covering the top 10 episodes, but to be honest I've really struggled with only choosing 10 out of the 115 episodes that have aired so far. So that's why I've expanded this list to 20. I should note that there will be full spoilers for every episode included in this list, so if you're not up to date with the show then I suggest you don't watch any further. Or if you don't care about spoilers then just watch ahead anyway. Without further ado, let's begin this countdown. Unless you've never watched a video on my channel before, you're probably aware that as far as I'm concerned, when Rick arrived at Alexandria, that's when the show took a dip in terms of quality massively. But despite me feeling this way, I don't believe that all the episodes which were primarily set in this location were all bad, with Try being one of the better installments featured during the second half of Season 5. Although there are multiple story threads at play during this episode, for me the best portion of the entry comes when Rick is trying to stop Pete's abuse of Jesse. The fact that Deanna knew what Pete was up to all along but refused to do anything because of his doctor status made me want to see Rick smash his face in even more. When the pair of them came to blows with one another, it certainly didn't disappoint, with a fight that started inside Pete's house eventually making its way onto the streets after both men ended up flying through his front room window. At one point I genuinely thought that Rick was going to kill Pete in front of everyone, as not even Carl could force his dad to leave the abusive alcoholic wife beater alone. As much as I wanted to see Rick hurt Pete, the longer he had him in a chokehold the more anxious I became. Was I really about to see Rick strangle a man to death in front of an entire community, in front of his son? Well, no, because in the end Rick did manage to control himself and spare Pete, instead choosing to put a gun on the people of Alexandria. Jesus, Rick, what are you doing? Rick's rant that followed was one of Andrew Lincoln's finest moments on the show, and after being with Rick from the very beginning, this was one of those moments where I just wanted to hold my head in my hands. I mean, here he was covered in blood, kneeling on the floor, rocking backwards and forwards like some lunatic, yelling at everyone around him whilst waving a gun in the air. It was really sad to see someone we've been with for so long have a complete and utter breakdown, even if arguably if some of what he did say was actually warranted. Aside from Rick going mental, I don't particularly think the rest of this episode itself is anything spectacular. However, because the closing 10 or so minutes are so damn good, I couldn't just leave Try out of this list. Next up is the only entry on this list from Season 8, with the Ezekiel focused some guy just about making the cut. Now I know this may sound a bit cheeky, but seeing as I have already made a 10-minute review video on this episode when it first aired, I won't be going into too much detail about it now again, as I don't really want to repeat myself. However, I will quickly summarise why I like this episode so much, with the main reason being that it finally brought the curtains down on Ezekiel's theatrical king act. After losing the majority of his men to the Saviours, Ezekiel suffers from a crisis of confidence, and even questions why he's pretending to be royalty. I love the fact that the real genuine Ezekiel was on show for all to see, and it actually made me connect with his character for the first time after finding him to be way too over the top previously. The saviour that hounded him throughout the episode also put in a great performance until his death when he was brutally chopped in half by Jerry. Also, I found that Shiva's death had more of an impact on me than anyone who had died since Glenn and Abe. Some Guy was an episode that evoked feelings from the older seasons of the show, and perhaps if the rest of Season 8 had been like this entry, it would have been much more enjoyable to watch. Do you know what it's like to be hounded constantly? To have someone waiting for you at every single turn? To always have someone one step ahead of you waiting in the shadows? Oh, you do? Oh, okay, I guess I'll stop stalking you then. Anyway, that odd introduction to this entry does have a reason to exist besides me just being weird, and that's because those very same feelings of being watched and trapped were how I imagine Rick felt during the Season 6 finale, Last Day on Earth. With Maggie looking like crap, Rick and most of the entire population of Alexandria decided to take her to Hilltop to get medical help. Along the way they were stopped by the Saviours at almost every turn, and even if they decided to take another route, the Saviours knew they were coming and planned accordingly. This episode did a fantastic job of portraying the size of their organisation, with it really hitting home just how big and powerful this new group was. Yeah, it did seem a bit far-fetched for them to be seemingly everywhere and for them to have an unlimited amount of resources and men, but hey, I'll let it slide. I also thought the moment in which Rick desperately carried a sick Maggie through the woods, with the Saviours whistling in the background, leading Rick and his people like a flock of sheep into their pen, was absolutely fantastic. In fact, I would argue it's one of the nerviest moments on the show. Negan's introduction that followed couldn't have been better. Oh no, wait, actually it could have been, because he killed the cameraman. Yeah, let's try and forget about that. Okay, we all know that the ending was a complete piss take, but Negan was still fantastic during his appearance in this episode. Whereas now I feel his character's become a bit of a joke, when he was first introduced he was bloody scary, and it's a shame because I haven't really felt this way about him for quite a long time. Ultimately, the botched ending tarred what should have been a perfect introduction to the Saviour leader. However, as it stands, I still think it's a very good episode. The next entry is the season finale of the underrated second season of the show. With a much smaller budget at hand than the inaugural season, Season 2 spent the entirety of its time on Herschel's farm. Those wishing for the group to move on got their wish during Besides the Dying Fire, as all hell finally broke loose when viewers got their first taste of just what kind of damage a Walker herd is capable of doing. Rick and co tried their best to defend the farm, but to no avail, eventually having to concede defeat and retreat. The battle itself was an exciting and action-filled affair, featuring Rick and Carl setting a barn on fire and then jumping on top of the caravan, as well as Glenn and T-Dog driving around the farm popping zombie heads with a shotgun. In addition, seeing Herschel give his all in order to protect his farm before finally accepting that he had to leave was rather heartbreaking. It wasn't just the action though that excelled this episode, as there were also some fantastic revelations that occurred after the farm fell to pieces. Rick told the group that they were all infected, as well as what really happened to Shane, much to the shock and horror of everyone. He then went on to establish the dictatorship by proclaiming that it wasn't a democracy anymore, which has gone on to become one of his most famous lines. Comic favourite Michonne was also teased when she stumbled upon Andrea in the woods, and the prison was also referenced at the back end of the episode. Simply put, Besides the Dying Fire did a great job of wrapping up one season while setting the events in motion for the following one. Of course, I know that most people are probably expecting this episode to be a lot higher, such is the general opinion of it since its release, and you know what, I do like this episode, but I can't help but feel it's a tad bit overrated. Don't get me wrong, the Look at the Flowers moment is amazing, but the rest of the episode that surrounds it to me just isn't that special. I probably am a bit biased as I'm not really keen on any of the characters that this episode focuses on, but hey, I'm not going to shit on anyone who absolutely loves this episode. Just know that I don't love it as much as most people do. I do admire its premise though, and I also admire the fact that the writers had the balls to not only have a child kill another child, but then have an adult character kill the remaining child. Prior to The Grove, a lot of the more gruesome content from the comics had been cut whilst adapting The Walking Dead to TV. For instance, the Governor and Michonne both did unspeakable things to one another in the comics, but this was nowhere to be seen during the prison arc. And also, more significantly, baby Judith was killed during the Governor's final assault in the prison, which of course didn't happen on TV. It was reasonable then to assume that because of some of the toned down aspects on the show previously, killing kids would be an absolute no-go, which is why The Grove is one of the bravest chapters of the show. It also threw up some interesting questions regarding what to do with a mentally ill child during the apocalypse. I mean, it's not like you can grab the kid and take them to a shrink, this is a different world, and Carol knew that sadly Mika was too dangerous to live. Like I said a moment ago, I take nothing away from the Look at the Flowers moment. It's iconic and one of the best scenes in the show. However, to me, it feels like the rest of the episode that surrounds it is more fondly remembered just because how good its ending is. As a fan of the Walking Dead comics, I can't help but notice there's been an awful lot of changes from the source material that have taken place over the years. Some of these changes have arguably been for the better. For example, I much prefer Herschel's depiction on TV than on paper. However, some of these changes have been made for the worse. For example, Carl being killed on a TV show means we won't be able to see any eye socket licking action take place in the near future. Ah, damn it, I was really looking forward to that. Anyway, the show's decision to flesh out Shane and have him stick around up until the farm resulted in him being a hell of a lot better than his short-lived comic book counterpart. And the episode Better Angels managed to do a fantastic job of portraying just how far gone he really was. After Dale's death during the previous episode, Rick took it upon himself to honour his legacy by sparing Randall, a decision which tipped an already angry Shane completely over the edge. Consumed by rage due to his belief that Rick was a bad leader combined with his pining for Laurie, Shane took Randall out into the woods and snapped his neck like a twig. Then, out of nowhere like Jim Carrey in Liar Liar, he decided to kick his own arse by headbutting a tree. As you do. Anyway, Shane did this in order to make it look like Randall had attacked him and that he was on the loose, with his end goal being to lure Rick into the woods just so he could get him on his own and kill him. Now it goes without saying that this is really messed up on Shane's part. And one of the things I really liked about this episode is that there comes a moment when Rick realises what Shane is doing. He knows he's trying to take him out somewhere remote to kill him, but he still lets him carry on. Maybe he does so because he thinks that Shane will snap out of it and stop, or maybe he does so because deep down he knows that Shane is past the point of redemption and knows he must kill him himself. The final coming together of these two was rather sad and also significant in that it signalled a change in Rick, with him going from Mr. Nice Guy to Mr. I'll put a machete in your head if you try to mess with me. Carl having to shoot Shane's reanimated corpse, with Rick distraught due to believing that his son wanted to shoot him after witnessing what he had done, was inspired. All in all, this episode was a great ending for Shane's character, and an important moment in Rick and Carl's post-apocalyptic lives. Look, if you've been around my channel since I started covering The Walking Dead, you'll probably know I'm not too keen on the show's 6th season. I've been pretty vocal in how underwhelming I find this chapter of the franchise to be. However, despite this, I still believe it produced 2 fantastic action-packed episodes. And Not Tomorrow Yet is the first of these that I'm going to talk about. With Rick striking a deal with the Hilltop, he managed to convince the Alexandrians that they have to attack first in order to end a war before it even began. What follows are some absolutely superb action scenes which are wedged between some truly uncomfortable moments of TV. Now, I don't mean uncomfortable in the sense of witnessing shocking horror and gore. Instead, I mean I found this episode uncomfortable in the sense that it managed to throw a real curveball in making us question the path that Rick was going down. But sneaking into a base and stabbing people as they sleep isn't exactly the actions of a good guy, especially seeing as the soldiers at the outpost did nothing personally to Rick. Yes, I know that a couple of the saviors had run into Abraham, Daryl and Sasha a few episodes previous and threatened them, but I still think that killing people as they slept is very cowardly on Rick's part. Up until this point, Rick had done some very nasty things, but I always felt he was doing them for valid reasons and he always had my full support. This assault marked the first real time that I found myself not fully supporting the Rictator, and I applaud the show for taking a risk in making its protagonist carry out something that writers knew would divide its audience. Aside from the attack on the outpost, there were also some great other moments during this episode. Firstly, Rick punching one of the walker heads in the face in order to make it look like Gregory, and seeing the Hilltop guy's reaction was hilarious. Secondly, how can you not enjoy seeing Father Gabriel with a sniper rifle eradicating saviors as he quoted the Bible? It was seriously badass. Lastly, I also liked that this episode tasked Glenn and Heath with killing humans for the first time in what was the bleakest of circumstances. And ironically, after struggling to kill one saviour, they ended up killing dozens after they charged at them after the alarm went off. To put it simply, Not Tomorrow Yet is a cracking episode that unfortunately belongs in my least favourite season of the show. The season 4 finale A certainly doesn't pull any punches. This episode features not one but 2 nail-biting, heart-in-throat moments that on their own will be more than sufficient in delivering that end of season shock and awe that so often come with the end of each year of The Walking Dead. Firstly, the Claimers story arc is allowed to reach its brutal conclusion. By this point in the programme, we'd already seen a lot of really bad people. However, I would say that the Claimers were possibly the worst kind. After ambushing Rick, the Claimers leader Joe taunts him by explaining they're going to rape Carl and Michonne in front of him before killing him after he's had to watch the entire ordeal. In fact, we actually see one of the grubby fat members of the group attempt to have his dirty way with Carl, at which point you can see the colossal amount of anger behind Rick's eyes. Although this entire sequence is pretty goddamn disgusting, I'm glad The Walking Dead had the guts to deal with this kind of topic, because truthfully I do believe that if the world did go to shit, there would be sick bastards out there who would try to do this thing and get away with it. Anyway, what follows next is a moment that I have spoken about in a previous video, in which Rick demonstrates some very impressive improvisation skills by biting Joe's neck, ripping out his jugular before killing the rest of the Claimers. It's a truly badass moment and one of the only times in the show where I've actually fist pumped the air and shouted out loud. If that wasn't enough to set your pulse racing, A ends with Rick and Co turning up at Terminus only to find all isn't what it seems. Immediately things appear off when the community appears to be so barren despite its huge size, but it's Rick's eagle-eyed spot of Glenn's watch on one of the guards that gives the game up. Despite managing to escape from one tricky situation earlier on, Rick can't get out of Terminus. There are guards posted everywhere who force him and his group into a boxcart to wait to be eaten. It's at this point that Rick delivers his iconic line straight from the comics, "They're fucking with the wrong people." Well, at least that's on the DVD release anyway. And then season 4 comes to a close. I guess maybe if I'd watched this episode when it originally aired, this cliffhanger may have been a bit frustrating, but as someone who managed to get into The Walking Dead by binging through the first 5 seasons, I went straight into the season 5 premiere after this finale because I couldn't wait to see what happened next. Looking back, it's kind of amazing that 2 iconic moments appear in one installment, and for me, A is definitely the most entertaining and memorable season finale The Walking Dead has produced thus far. Season 3's mid-season finale, Made to Suffer, finally caused the Governor and Rick to come face to face with one another. Okay, they probably couldn't see each other through all the smoke and gunfire, but this was still the moment in which Rick and the Governor's rivalry was really born. Rick wanting to rescue the captured Glenn and Maggie, bombards Woodbury guns blazing, causing panic in the sectioned off streets. Michonne, who is tagged along, has other plans however, wanting to get back at Philip for sending Mel to try and kill her after she decided to leave the community. Although Michonne is nowhere near as brutal in her vengeance as in the comics, she does manage to mess the Governor up pretty bad, stabbing a piece of glass in his eye in a moment that looks so painful I'm sure it made a lot of viewers wince. The entire fight sequence is a raw bloody mess, with both characters doing everything they can to try and kill the other person. Of course, the reason why the governor got so angry in the first place is because Michonne killed his Walker daughter, an act which caused him to throw away what little humanity he had remaining. I liked how the governor used the attack on Woodbury to implant propaganda into his people's minds, immediately declaring it was a terrorist attack, riling up his people to take arms against Rick. I mean, it's funny how he conveniently forgot to tell everyone that he actually took Glenn and Maggie hostage first and tortured them, instead making it out like Woodbury was attacked for no reason. Again, it may sound strange of me to mention that I like another cliffhanger ending, seeing how often I moan about them normally, but personally I found the ending in which Daryl and Mel finally reunited with one another in the most awful of circumstances to be fantastic. It managed to both build up excitement as well as make me feel sad in seeing Daryl's reaction to finally finding his brother, knowing that one of them would have to die. As it turned out, they both managed to get out of the situation fairly easily, but it still was one of those moments that left me wanting to watch more. As much as I hate Season 6 for its incredibly slow pacing, especially during its first half, the mid-season premiere No Way Out managed to faithfully translate the Walker invasion of Alexandria from the comics to big screen without compromise. Okay, you could argue that the attack took place in the summer instead of the winter, but that would just make you a pedantic arsehole. As someone who had by this point caught up with the comics, it was great to see such a superb adaptation, even if it did mean saying goodbye to Jesse, who was a personal favourite of mine. After what I considered to be a pretty bad cop-out ending the episode before, I can't say I was all that excited going into this episode. Thankfully, the early scenes with Daryl, Sasha and Abraham set the tone for the craziness that was to follow. Yes, I know the whole Daryl rocket launcher moment was a bit silly, but I loved it. Seeing the Savior spontaneously combust with the Karen then turning to Mr. Dixon with a rocket launcher over his shoulder was just brilliant. The Walker attack on Alexandria followed, and it seemed like everything was going to plan until poor Sam lost his shit and was promptly devoured by the Walkers, with this causing a huge chain reaction. Sam's death led to Jesse getting eaten, with Rick having to hack away at her hand to help Carl escape. Ron then arrived with a gun and was stabbed by Michonne. This caused Ron to inadvertently fire his gun, resulting in Carl losing his eye in a manner that was ripped straight out from the comics. I don't blame you if you wanted to take some time to catch your breath after this sequence and finish playing out. However, after Rick had taken Carl back to the infirmary, things kicked off almost immediately again. I absolutely love watching Rick when he loses it, and as soon as he headed away from an injured Carl towards the door, I knew he was going to go absolutely insane. And go insane he most certainly did, throwing himself into the Walkers and using his adrenaline and anger to kill as many as he could. Whether this move was stupid or brave is up for debate, but Rick's action ultimately inspired the entire community to take up arms with him, as after seeing him slugging it away on the street, they knew they couldn't let him die alone. Overall, it's a really good episode that nicely wraps up the Alexandria story arc, which paves the way for the larger world narrative that is to follow. I still don't particularly like the 6th season of The Walking Dead, but I will say that it does have its moments, and this entry was one of the best and just narrowly misses out on making the top 10. So there you have it, part 1 of the best Walking Dead episodes has come to an end. Please let me know your thoughts below, and also please bear in mind that if your favourite episode hasn't yet appeared, it may well appear in part 2. I know I promised to make this video ages ago, so thank you very much for being so patient in waiting for this to come out. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye. Hello again, so I thought I'd just do a quick update for those of you who have stayed on the video, because you may have noticed that this is my first video I've put out for quite a long time. So as you all know, I've switched to this new way of making videos and trying to do it with my camera instead of the old way, which was just me recording my voice with static pictures over the top. And although, you know, it's been going well, people have been quite receptive of it, I've not been happy with the quality. So I've tried the last month to try and get some proper lighting in, which I have on this video, so hopefully you'll see the difference. The problem is I did buy some lights and they broke very quickly, and I had a lot of trouble trying to get the money back from the guy who sold them. So I had that, and that took a good few weeks to get that sorted. And then I've had to order these ones, and I've only just sorted it out. So it's only finally now, you know, coming to shape and sort of sorting itself out. So the aim is to go back to what I was doing before, you know, a couple of videos a week, hopefully. But anyway, you know, it will be a more consistent upload schedule than it has been. I don't normally have 3-4 weeks where I don't do anything. I want to put out something every week. So now I've got the equipment, I'm quite happy I could do that. So that's the main reason. I mean, the other reason is just it's just been far too hot for me to want to record. Like I said before, you know, if you've watched my my last video when I was having a bit of a talk at the end, I don't like the heat, and that's why I've got the Javier Hernandez haircut at the moment. No, not the weird blonde look he went for, you know, what he normally has. So yeah, so in the evenings I've just found myself thinking I don't want to record. To be quite honest, it's just too hot. Hopefully it'll cool down a bit, and I've got my lighting now, so even if it is hot, I'm just gonna have to give me a kick up the arse and tell me to actually do some work. And lastly, I guess that I've just been watching the World Cup and been a bit lazy, so sorry about that, but now it's over and England are out. I should be back on track. So I just want to say, yeah, thank you everyone for your patience. Thank you for waiting for me, to put a video out. And yeah, we'll go back to how things are. I also just want to say, in the future, I am planning on doing videos that aren't exclusive to The Walking Dead. The next actual video that I'm going to do is about The Rain, which is the Netflix series. So I'm going to want to try and review other programs. I'll talk about it a bit more after that video. But yeah, I just don't want to sort of be a one-trick pony, just continuously talk about The Walking Dead, because, what if The Walking Dead does come to an end, or what if people start not liking it? What if I fall out of love with it? I don't want to just talk about one thing constantly. And other people started suggesting, maybe look at other shows and do other things like that. And yeah, I want to do it. It does. I think there's a bit. You can get a bit burnt out talking about the same thing constantly. So even the biggest channels, look like what's his name, Trev's Chan, who's he's 200,000 subs or whatever. He talks about Game of Thrones and other programs, because I think it's all well and good dedicating yourself to one thing, but I think after a while you can sort of end up where you get to the stage of you're just repeating yourself, talking about the same thing. And and I think as well, watching other shows and reviewing other things will be good for me and mean I can improve my reviews and reference other things, because if I'm quite honest, I don't really watch a lot of TV. I get bored quite easily, so I'm a bit fidgety person, as you can probably see from me bouncing around in my videos. I never sit still. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, like I said, I won't talk a lot about it, because hopefully I'm going to put that video out during the week, and then make up your own minds if you like it. You don't, just let me know then. But anyway, I'll let you all go. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.